First up, we'll keep an eye on the news breaking out of Gaza, as I said. But with that ceasefire kicking in and hours to go, the preparation there is really underway. We'll keep an eye on that, as we say. But first, I want to talk about some names that we all remember and have in common. Kevin Rudd, Anthony Albanese, Tony Burke and Mark Dreyfus. What is it that those four have in common? Well, let me tell you. The disastrous Rudd-Gillard-Rudd governments, and it was a chaotic disaster the second time around for Kevin Rudd, those four cabinet ministers were central to the failed border protection that in the end saw 50,000 illegal boat entries on 800 boats with an estimated 1,200 men and women and children dying at sea. Now, it's an estimate only because, tragically, we will never know the true figure. And who could ever forget the midweek horror? I can remember sitting watching this in 2010 with Julia Gillard in charge. It was December when a leaky wooden people smuggling boat laden with desperate illegal refugees, ripped off by people smugglers, was smashed apart against the rocks of Christmas Island. Those pictures just resonate with all Australians. So shocking were the pictures that Australians demanded everything be done to try and smash the people smuggling syndicates operating out of Indonesia. Operation Sovereign Borders was born. We had boat turnbacks, they happened. The Navy, Border Force, they cracked down on people smugglers organisations. Now, boat people were relocated, as we know, to Nauru and to Manus Island in Papua New Guinea during that time. Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison, in those years, guess what? The boats stopped. They stopped coming. No more heartbreaking deaths at sea. Labor and the Greens, of course, well, they hated the policy. The Greens back then, and still, disgracefully, want open borders. They don't care who comes, where they come from. They just classify them all as legitimate refugees, checks or no checks. The Labor left, think about Tony Burke, Anthony Albanese, they hate offshore detention. They always have. So the Prime Minister, Burke and Dreyfus are all back, with Rudd, of course, sitting in Washington as the Australian ambassador and pontificating on all things China. Now, Albanese is Prime Minister, Dreyfus is the Attorney General, and Tony Burke is the Leader of the House. So, 10 years after Labor's last disastrous attempt to secure our borders, I have a horrible feeling history is about to repeat itself. Now, the boats are back. And I suspect we don't hear about most of them. Some suggestion there may have been, since this new government's been there, around 12. But we have operational silence, well, until this week. Now, in about as remote a part of Australia as you could possibly get, the Kimberley, a spot on our mainland that is as close as you can get to Java, 12 people were discovered by local Indigenous landowners on Australian soil. Now, it wasn't Christmas Island, that legally at least is not part of our country, but it was on the mainland. They got here. The coast where they landed is near a RAF base. It was an airstrip that was constructed in 1944 for heavy bombers to attack the advancing Japanese because it was so close to Indonesia. It's remote, it's crocodile infested, and it's a miracle that these people, whoever they are, actually survived. Now, just this evening, the Nine papers are reporting that those 12 asylum seekers or fishermen, we don't yet know, have been taken to Nauru. They could be fishermen, but why would you take them to Nauru if they were fishermen? Border Force won't comment, but the government needs to. Now, the important point is they got here. And they got here after that High Court decision that saw over 100 illegal asylum seekers freed. Some of them rapists, murderers, domestic violence offenders, even pedophiles. One had raped a 10-year-old. These people got out on the streets. Now, a coincidence maybe, but that High Court message, that shows that there is a crack in what had been a very strong wall in Australia. Now, that would not have been lost on the criminal gangs in Indonesia selling seats on those boats. And even if they turned out to be fishermen, why were they actually on shore? Now, Australians have got every right to be worried. We are bringing in already 500,000 legal migrants a year in a migrant policy that's madness in itself. The country cannot cope with that number. Surely we can't allow this desperate trade that used fled detention centres for years under Rudd and Gillard. We don't want it to start again. Now, Labor's got a dreadful record on migration, legal and illegal. and the same old names are back in charge. This is not going to end well. Now, once news gets back to Java, the people smugglers, guess what? The boats will start all over again. And Opposition Leader Peter Dutton was right today to query whether the aggressive Operation Sovereign Borders has been wound down. We need to know that. No boats can be allowed to come. We can't have this happen again.